Let me take this opportunity to thank all of you for inviting our joint invitation for this side event. And to tell you that a few years ago, the presidents of Botswana, Gabon, Uganda, Kenya came together at the invitation of the conservation charity Space for Giants and their patron, Lord Lebedev, to combine our political leadership with the leadership of global business, philanthropy, and technical experts to combat the elephant poaching crisis. This year, we also welcomed our brother from Rwanda, His Excellency President Kagame, and also His Excellency President Filipe Nyusi of Mozambique to join our Giant Club presidents. The commitment of each of these individuals to build a nature-based economy is indisputable, and I'm proud to announce that through the work of the Giants Club, a huge amount of support from around the world, the elephant poaching crisis is no longer what it was when we started. I think we've done a considerable amount of work, and I want to appreciate the Giants Club for the investment that they have made into that endeavor. The Giants Club has invested heavily in the protection and restoration of the natural ecosystems on which our continent's giants depend, and it does so in ways that resonates with our people. They, like we, understand that wildlife reserves and sanctuaries need not only to be protected, but to also generate value for their communities and the country at large. We are focused on the elephant crisis, but today we come together again as the Giants Club to address an even bigger problem, and that is the prevention, halting, and reversing the degradation of ecosystems, not only in Africa, but across the globe. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which, as you all know, is the preeminent scientific body on climate change, has concluded that we will reach or exceed 1.5 degrees centigrade of warming within the next 2 decades, unless we each and collectively take action today. The report finds that our world's priceless carbon sinks are at great risk of becoming less effective at absorbing carbon dioxide as emissions ever increase. Africa, which accounts for roughly 18% of the world's population, contributes less than 4% of global emissions. And yet it is Africa that will unfortunately bear the biggest brunt of climate change impacts, with an average of 3 degrees centigrade warming, increasing conflicts as a result, and also increased insecurity in our regions. Our forests, our savannas, our mangroves and swamps, our coral reefs, and our marine reserves are the carbon sinks of the world. Indeed, they are the basis of the very oxygen that we breathe every day. And yet that great public benefit that the African ecosystem provides to the world has not yet been fully acknowledged, and it is neither sufficiently protected, and we have certainly not been compensated for it. And it is for this reason that many of these natural ecosystems have been degraded, often by our own local communities who have few economic alternatives. But from today, we can, together, all change that. Investors, consumers, and shareholders are beginning to demand that their companies start a process of decarbonizing their activities and moving towards a much more carbon-neutral world. Citizens have spoken out during this Leaders' Summit, on the margins, and even on the streets of Glasgow and Edinburgh, demanding that the world does the same. Through the voices of all these global citizens and all the climate change advocates, I believe there lies a great opportunity for Africa. If these companies and countries were to move towards becoming carbon neutral, they need viable, high-quality carbon credits to offset their residual emissions. Demand for such carbon credits actually outstripped supply for the first time this year. In Kenya, we have an example of giant companies such as Apple and Gucci that have invested in the restoration and the protection of the Chulu Hills and have secured important carbon credits in exchange. So using this example, I believe this is our opportunity. And we must together create an enabling environment to enable the conscientious to invest in restoring and protecting the great natural carbon capture machines that were gifted to us by God and nature. Restoring and protecting these carbon sinks can help also create hundreds of thousands of critical green jobs, drive enterprise away from destructive forms of land use, can help us tackle poverty, combat illegal wildlife trade, and also prevent future pandemics and ensure that the diversity of life on which all depend continues to endure. We in Kenya are currently implementing an ambitious national strategy that seeks to enhance protection of our valued forests, resources, and to develop an additional 2 billion trees for our country. All our public forests today have been put under enhanced protection. Over 1,208,000 hectares of new forests have been gazetted in our country, and 55,884 hectares of encroached public forests have been reclaimed and restored, and the government is creating and expanding urban green spaces in Nairobi, and we plan to move to other urban centers. My administration has also established a tree growing fund which aims to raise $5 billion towards reforestation, and I invite all of you to partner with us. We are also committed to the New York Declaration on Forests, which is pledged to halt deforestation by 2030, and the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People to restore our degraded terrestrial and marine ecosystems in line with the Global 30 by 30 commitments under the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity. This is in addition to the commitment we have to ensure that land degradation neutrality by 2030 as a contribution to the goals of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. However, ladies and gentlemen, today, very little investment goes towards nature-based solutions, where the greatest emission reduction opportunities for the African continent exist. We all know that resources for the COVID-19 pandemic vaccine and response were mobilized in a very short time possible, though shared unequally. However, despite this, developed countries have to date, since Paris, not been able to raise the 100 billion required to avert a crisis that is far more lasting and permanent than the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet every year, as we have heard, trillions of dollars are invested in fossil fuels. Ladies and gentlemen, we can change this. And that is why I can say with great pleasure that we are announcing today that we will be working with the Giants Club and it's implementing charity, which is Space for Giants, to build an enabling environment to attract private investment into our carbon sinks. This, I believe, will provide a clear pathway for private sector investors to invest in the restoration and protection of our carbon sinks, ensure that investments are made in a way that generates the highest possible return to communities who live in and around carbon sinks, and generate royalties for our treasuries. Towards this end, I want to recognize the efforts of my dear friend Adesina, the President of the African Development Bank, who is supporting us in this effort, and who will more broadly also for championing the adaptation agenda for our continent. With these few words, I would now like to also invite my dear friend to say a few words before the representatives of some of my colleagues also come up and say a word or two. I thank you all for attending, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.